From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to The Hub. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. The 8-day National Day and Mid-Autumn Festival holiday has just wrapped up after an extended break. That energized the whole nation with hundreds of millions of trips, bustling scenic spots, and booming consumption across China. As people head back to work on this first weekday after the long break, we take a closer look at what this holiday reveals about China's economic vitality, from record tourism revenue to surging spending in retail, dining, and entertainment. What do the numbers tell us about China's current growth momentum and consumer confidence, and what challenges and opportunities lie ahead? Now, to help us unpack all these questions, in Singapore, we have Dr. Wang Dan, China Director at Eurasia Group. In Beijing, China, we have Rick Dunham, co-director of the Global Business Journalism Program at Tsinghua University. And later on, hopefully we'll be joined in our Beijing studio by Professor Liu Baocheng as well. Now, I should say sorry to drag you guys back, right back to work after this very long holiday. So, Rick, let me start with you. Let's have a slow start. Maybe you can tell us a bit about your personal favorite moment, personal favorite memory from this very, very long holiday of 8 days.
Well, I think my favorite memory was a trip that my wife and I took to Vienna, Austria. We went to visit our senior nephew who is finishing up a work stint in Austria before returning to the United States. And so we had a very nice time. We ran into quite a few individual tourists from China. We also saw a number of tour groups from Korea, and I think that there were a fair number of tourists from Asia, more from Asia, I think, than from other countries in Europe.
Very good, very good. And Dr. Wang Dan, I assume that you spent your holiday in Singapore, not too far from China. What do you observe as the most remarkable thing about this National Day holiday?
Well, the National Day holiday doesn't apply to Singapore, so it's work days for us. But I have observed a tremendous amount of Chinese tourist visits in Singapore. There was the F1 car racing game from the 3rd to the 5th, and I attended those games at night. The atmosphere is very friendly, and people are having a great time. I also noticed that many of the domestic technology companies actually have rented booths for the FE car racing games to have their team building there. And that is a new momentum that I haven't seen before.
Very good, very good. Leveraging the visa-free arrangement from Singapore. Very nice indeed. And let me show you something. Professor Dunham, let me start with you. China recorded an estimated 2.4 billion domestic trips during this 8-day holiday, and that averages over 300 million per day, either for family visits or travel tourism trips. That is up 6% from last year. And also retail and catering sales up 3.3% year on year. How do you look at these numbers?
Well, we've been looking for a turnaround ever since the pandemic, and I think this is the first year that we can say unequivocally has been a turnaround. And I think this holiday boom signals more than just seasonality. I think it points to a sturdier base for domestic demand. I think that we can say with some modest certainty that things are beginning to turn around, that consumers are feeling good, not just about the holiday, but about travel, about the idea of spending money.
Dr. Wang Dan, do you see this turnaround? How do you see the tourism boom during the double holiday fitting into the larger picture of China's economic growth and restructuring?
Well, we have noticed this rising trend of mobility among population between regions within China. The foreign tourists in China are also getting more mobile. And I can see that this year being a turning around, exactly like Rick said, because the consumer confidence is more or less restored. Although we can't deny that the job market pressure is still there, the consumer confidence will ultimately be lifted by the increasing income. There's still a lot more work to do, but the anti-involution campaign does have some result in terms of not adding on extra workload to workers, so people do have more time and they feel more relaxed. Also, the double holiday do have 8 days instead of 7 days, and that makes a difference.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up this concept, that this anti-involution campaign that is basically a directive from the central government saying that, look, folks, you guys need to relax more and work less. Rick, how do you observe, this piece of policy working?
Well, I think it may have some effect, but I think more people are taking advantage of. I mean, wanting. I don't know so much it's top down that the government has told people you should relax, as people wanting to get away and take advantage of what's there. And really, there's been a boom in museums, and there's been a boom in development of experiences in localities around. Also, the transportation, I think, has made it easier for people to get around. I think that's probably contributed more. I think where the government has helped a lot has been in some of the policies that have made it easier for people to have some disposable income right now, to at least at the margins, to have more money to spend and feel a little bit better about having money to spend on experiences, on travel.
Dr. Wang Dan, what do you think are some of the other remarkable features about this double holiday tourism and travel consumption patterns, and what do they indicate about the Chinese economy?
There are for sure more travelers to smaller counties and less popular tourist destinations, and that had a lot to do with the improvement of local infrastructure. It used to be the case that roads are not there, there are no good restaurants or homestay opportunities, but now these options are ready. So I see a more balanced growth in tourists, and especially the tourism services among different regions.
Do you see this trend solidifying, meaning more Chinese traveling to county-level suburban rural areas instead of, choosing bustling city centers for, those iconic, Tiananmen Square or the Forbidden City? Do you see this trend continuing in the months and years ahead, Dr. Wang?
Because Chinese tourists are maturing. So for those who visit big cities during busy holidays are more or less the novel tourists. And we can see those big groups with little flags in front held by their tour guide everywhere. But these people didn't get out much. Once they get out a lot, then they will also venture out into smaller destinations. It's just simply less crowded and more pleasant.
Very interesting. Rick, let me go back to you later, but first, this year's National Day holiday coincides with the Mid-Autumn Festival, creating an extended 8-day Golden Week holiday. So far, cross-province or domestic Chinese bookings for the holiday have increased by 45% year-on-year, indicating a strong and continued rebound in the cultural and tourism market.
After going viral for its barbecue, Zibo has become a must-visit destination. A new comprehensive project combining barbecue, local specialties, and intangible cultural heritage experiences is attracting large crowds. The city has also upgraded its nighttime economy in key business districts, offering a combination of dining and live performances for deeper cultural immersion.
Getting barbecue with a live show is entirely new to me.
Since gaining popularity for its spicy hot pot last spring, Tianshui remains a top draw for tourists. Multiple scenic spots in Tianshui are collaborating, promoting the city and offering free admission tickets at the spicy hot pot courtyard, encouraging visitors to explore beyond the culinary attraction. A joint ticket policy covering 10 scenic spots provides convenience and savings for tourists.
We hope visitors know that Tianshui has so much more to offer than just its spicy hot pot.
With outdoor temperatures dropping to around 20 degrees Celsius, winter has come early at Harbin's Dream Ice Snow World. Visitors to the Dream Ice Snow World can step into a crystal kingdom made entirely of real ice and snow. The pavilion has been upgraded this year with elements celebrating the upcoming Asian Winter Games, with themed areas like Ocean World and Snowman Square for immersive fun. Shen Li, CGTN.
Well, Professor Liu, thank you so much for joining us at this hour. I mean, China is certainly a big country, as diverse as it is vast. We just saw some natural ice and snow in Harbin, and also some natural beauty of lucid water and great mountains down south. What do you make of the tourism boom during this double holiday? Do you think this is more of a temporary boom or more of a substantial turnaround in China's consumption?
Well, I think it's both because right now a number of drivers that supports such sort of active tourism. One is, of course, the integrated infrastructure that is available that compresses the sense of time and space within the travelers. And second is that the government has really given a lot of incentives. Some of the local governments even offer coupons and long-term attraction for the tourists. And then the type of online support by explaining certain areas so that to familiarize the tourists in their preparation stage is also very important. And now, more importantly is really the government that is giving more of the social welfare to the growing middle class, and then the middle class are also seeking for experience and also the culture instead of taking a video or taking a short picture on a local sports. So therefore, it is really the supply and demand and also the infrastructure support that's there to sustain such a sort of a resilient consumption pattern. I do not think it's really a sort of impulsive, but rather it's a long-term trend that supports the growing middle class.
Yeah, Rick, let me ask you. It's not just traveling for the sake of traveling. Those who stayed or had a staycation, they went to the cinemas, they went to concerts, museums, taking their kids to camping, to the parks. That also contributed to the tourism boom. What do you think?
Oh, I agree completely. And while I may not be Chinese, I think I'm rather typical Chinese tourist because over the past year I have visited many of the cities, many smaller rural areas, not the big locations from Heilongjiang to the southern part of Yunnan province, from Guangxi to Qinghai, and take advantage of the diversity of the experiences that are there, from the lakes to the operas, cultural attractions, and you do spend money on a wide range of things. It's not just a hotel and an entry fee, and
Rick, you know what?
I
I think there's some technical glitch over there, but we'll come back to you for sure. During this 8-day holiday, there's a very impressive set of data. And let me show it with you. Highway traffic averaged 62 million vehicles, as you can see over there. That is per day, including about 12.5 million new energy vehicles, green vehicles, nearly 20% of the total. That's up 30% year on year. And this is interesting. On October the 1st, EV charging volume hit a record of 17.49 million kilowatts, up 42%. Now, Professor Liu, Professor Liu, how do Chinese enterprises better embed sustainability into their holiday offerings? And what opportunities do you see for this, growing consumption patterns?
There are different suppliers or stakeholders along this entire supply chain of service-oriented industry. One would be the tourist spots, where do they really provide a sort of sophisticated catering to those tourists, not in terms of the hot spots, but also the level of service, the level of hospitality, the professional type of catering, and also the standard food, in terms of quality, and then the catering of emergency relief, and some of the clinics, and also the curators are also very important to drive in-depth of the experience and exploration of the people. And largely also the local community are also very, very important, because tourists are no longer there simply to have a quick look, but rather they want to immerse into the local community, talk with people, and also dig into the long embedded histories of the local community. So that's something that that's really highly supportive. And also the government is also there to give quick information, for example, to organize certain events in consideration of the security, but also the high level of entertainment. And then the tourist guides can also be better trained, so that they build a whole network of traveling instead of leaving one simply to a spot, and not to mention that to leave them only for shopping experience.
Yeah, Professor Liu, I've got to ask you this, because you've been studying the Chinese countryside and rural revitalization for quite a while, writing several books on it. And this year, we're very happy to see that there has been a 50% year-on-year increase from tourists visiting county-level tourism spots. Those are either rural villages and townships, or suburban areas, other than big cities. How do you see this trend happening, and do you think they're here to stay?
I think definitely, because I think a couple of years ago, I heard from the official of the Food Organization of the United Nations that Chinese countryside is no longer that beautiful because of the smell of the fertilizer, pesticide, etc. But nowadays, it is very clean, very green, and you see so many trees that are propping up along the road and within the land, etc. So with birds and the singing, and the local communities are also very hospitable. They know how to handle the right type of service, because they have also been tourists and seeing that how those tourists are looking forward to certain type of the service, not only in terms of amenity, but also in offering them local stories, and also guiding them around with the old people who knows all the history of the localities. And I think fundamentally it is really the infrastructure that's really there to cover the last mile mystery of those people, so that people can drive into villages without the the bumping roads and the muddy roads, etc. So and also locally, they offer a number of activities in entertainment, in the unique food supply, and also in the DIY type of picking and hostels, etc. So these are really there to continually support. Now that the local communities are so much incentivized by the early harvest for the last few years in their income, definitely they will continue to cater more, and also to support the tourists to come and stay even longer.
We also want more foreign tourists to come and stay, and of course to spend. Dr. Wang, to what extent do you think China's visa-free policies and 240-hour visa transit-free policies have worked to attract foreigners and expats to come and visit China? And what are the things that China could perhaps have done better and should do better going forward to attract more foreign tourists and make them feel more hospitable and welcomed here, and their China experience more smooth?
We've been tracking this data very closely because it's a reflection actually on China's side to improve the accessibility of its market. And in the past 3 years, in fact, we can see the main tourist visit from foreign countries to China were driven by the visa-free policies. There was a jump in 2023 and another jump in 24. This year, in the first 8 months, actually more than 60% of the foreign visitors in China were coming under this visa-free policy. So I see great potential, in fact, in the future as more people come into China, see what's going on, because there is a lack of understanding on the living quality, on how the cities are run, how people are viewing the economy. There are a lot of misconceptions about China. Once you're sitting outside of China, then there are a lot of the narratives on China are simply not true. So this is a benefit, not just for China's tourism, but on the overall economic environment.
Yeah, Rick, you're nodding your head. I mean, there is this big gap between those who visited China, talk to the Chinese, look at them in the eyes and feeling them out, versus those who've never been to China, watching mostly Fox News and MSNBC, right?
Yeah, there's nothing better for China than to get international visitors to come to China, and the visa-free policy is a good start. I'll tell you what I think is the best thing that's happened for Chinese one-on-one relations, and that was in 2016, the 10-year visas that were issued. And I had a number of friends from the United States who got 10-year visas and have been to China 2-3 times, and I hope that policy is renewed. I would push for more of those kinds of visas, to have long-term tourist visas, make visas easier, not just the 240-hour visas, but make it easier for people to get visas. Whatever the government of China can do to encourage people to come is a great benefit to this country, because once visitors come to China, they get to meet people and they get to see the country, and it breaks through all the stereotypes and it breaks through all of the negative news coverage, and you get to see the reality. And the reality doesn't have to be 100% positive. The reality is real, and the reality is the wonderful history. And the great food and the culture, and that's what you want the world to see.
Rick, you know what? America has over 325 million people. That is more than a lot of the Western world's populations combined. People often ignore that, but America is a country with a big population. Let's say if China give America a visa-free arrangement as well, as it has to much of the Western world, do you expect that to be a major boom to, a two-way traffic of tourism, but also understanding?
I think that would be a huge boom. I think that would be the biggest thing that could be done to spur tourism. And I mean, the second big, I think that would increase the demand for airline flights, which would reduce the cost. If there was a visa-free policy, demand would go up so much that the airline prices would come down, and you would have many American visitors. I think that would be a benefit to both countries and to mutual understanding.
I think it's a multi-tier engagement. For example, right now we have far fewer American students here, and with more American students, their families, their relatives can come and visit, and then the more of the communication needs to be enhanced from the Chinese side, because when China introduced the security law, espionage law, some Americans, when I was really on a tour in the United States for some of the academic discussions, they asked, well, how do they really label espionage? How do they label spies, etc.? That's something that's a mystic type of interpretation. And then the businesses also need to work together with the American business community so that they can engage only by this level of trust and also this level of communication that's bring people at least to see and believe. So I think both sides can really sit together and to explain the situation and to at least, if not to remove, but to expose certain of the political agenda that is there to make unnecessary hurdles for such sort of engagement. I know, I'm also going to the APEC. Hopefully, during the APEC, we can bring up this issue. Actually, this afternoon, we are going to discuss, how the business community can really build a better understanding and build a better engagement with multi-stakeholders, including that of the, all the APEC countries that can really better understand and better trust each other before we can really do better business.
Yeah, we have 1 minute left. Dr. Wang Dan, any final thoughts?
So since we're talking about tourism, there are a lot to be said about China's services industry. There are tremendous investment in this industry already. But I think one aspect that people often ignore is the quality of digital infrastructure in China. The signal coverage is great everywhere. For my job, I'm traveling all over the place, especially in Europe and the US, and no country can do what China can do when it comes to the safety of traveling. The signal coverage everywhere, and that would increase the regional influence and it will facilitate everyone's traveling.
Yeah, I can testify to that. At major subway stops in China across cities, not just big cities, metropolises, but also third and fourth tier cities, you've got great coverage, 5G coverage, LTE coverage for those tourists and residents alike. I want to thank all of you for sharing your insights today, and thank you so much for joining us, and also to our viewers for staying with us. And as we wrap up this edition, as the nation returns to work after the National Day holiday and Mid-Autumn Festival holiday, we also want to express our appreciation to everyone who keeps things running behind the scenes. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. Thank you for watching.